Okay, so this is where we left off last time. I'd built the wings in part 4A, that's these. There's a little bit more work to do on them. What I found was that the upper wingtip has quite a prominent step on it, and I'm not sure if that's the way I've built it or it's a fault in the kit. I'm not sure. I think it's probably likely that I've clamped this upper wing surface a bit too tightly and it's depressed it a little bit. So I'm going to have to sort that out. I've already done the starboard wing and leveled that. Just takes a bit of sanding. So I'm going to have to do the same with this port wing. But the main concern I've got now is to get the wings fitted together with all these various wing fillets and the underside cowling. This is the bottom engine cowling that needs to go on. And I want all these sections to go on without any gaps, obviously. The difficulty with the way Zoukei Mura engineer the kit with all these different sections is that a slight building error in one part can just throw the whole assembly out. So I just want to make sure that they're all going to go together properly. This section here, which just fits in between the undercarriage legs, a bit like that. It's not exactly how it fits, but I don't want to push it in at the moment. We've got this section. We've got a plate that goes on the underside here, and we've got two wing fillets, and obviously the cowling and the nose ring here. So what I've done off camera over the last few days is that I've put the nose ring together. It's just two halves joined together, and I've also built this section. This is actually 3 separate pieces in the Zoukei Mura kit. So they've been assembled and I've left them to dry. I've rescribed the panel line here. One improvement that I want to make to this before I fit it is to just thin down the edges, just to give it a bit more of a scale thickness. It's a little bit over scale at the moment, so it doesn't take long just with a sanding stick, just thin that down a little bit. That'll do. It just gives it a little bit more finesse and puts it in scale a little bit more. Obviously I have to do both sides. Okay, so that's a bit better. Bit of an easy improvement to make. I'll just check the fit of this again. Okay, so I think they're all going to go together reasonably well. Obviously I'm going to have to paint the inside of the lower engine cowling. I think you will be able to see that. So I'll do those together with the nose ring. So then I can look to get all these panels fitted and get the wings on. Just a ejector pin mark on the underside of this flap. It's worth removing, and that bit of sanding also thins the trailing edge of the flap as well, so it gives again a bit more scale thickness to that. This is the oil cooler, It's just in two halves. Okay, so it's time to get all the elements around the wings and the fillets into position. So I just need to do some assembly now. Start with the oil cooler. I've check fitted this cowling onto the aircraft, and it's not possible to see the interior really, so I'm not going to bother weathering it. I'll leave it just with the green on it. Okay, so as you can see, I've glued the wings into position and fitted the fillets. That's simple enough, but the problem comes with this assembly with fitting this forward piece of the underside and the large plate here and the engine cowling. They've all got to line up at the same time. This was actually hinged on the starboard side and opened like that, and it was fixed in place with two catches which we can see here and here. Now, because of the position of those catches, there's no forward or backwards movement really in that cowling part. So what I'm going to do to close that gap is put a very thin strip of styrene along the back edge, because I'm not going to be able to fill that with putty. It'll show on the inside. So a strip of styrene will just bridge the gap that we need there and hopefully close everything up. The gap at the front to the nose ring is fine, so we can see it fits all right there. I've just got this problem at the back to deal with. So obviously this isn't ideal that we've got this gap to deal with. But to be honest, with the number of parts that have to come together on this kit, it's no surprise really that we can run into problems like this. I'm just going to connect this little by little. So you can see that I've just added that little strip on the back there. I've primed the join at the back just to make sure it's disappeared, which it has. And I've masked the intakes with some little pieces of foam in here, just so we don't get anything onto those radiators or those oil coolers as they are. And I've gone ahead and slotted the wings into position together with the upper wing fillet. Now that's not the way that Zoukei Mura advises to do this assembly and get the wings fitted. They suggest that you glue the wings on, get all the other panels fitted around the wings, and then fit the fillets in at the last. But I test fitted this in several different ways, and I found that this was the best way to do it. So I fitted the upper wing fillet first, and that gives the correct reference for where the upper part of the wing needs to join onto it here. Then I slotted this forward panel into place here. You can see I've removed this underside panel, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But next step is to get this front panel in, and that enables you to seal the top wing to fuselage joint. So we know that we've got a good join at that point. And only when you've got everything lined up there do you attach the main spar here through the spar carry through on the underside. So that ensures that you've got a tight fit on the top, that the wing fillets are in the correct position, and this forward section is in the correct position as well. And you remember that I did the extension to the back of this lower engine cowling. We can see that putting that into position has closed that gap between the cowling and this panel here, so that's all good. The front cowling ring fits on as well, so that's a good join. So now we just come back to this underside panel. And that now fits in reasonably okay. There's a little bit of a gap here at the front where it joins this front panel, but I'm not too bothered about that. Part of it is covered by the drop tank rack, which is this. So that covers a lot of the gap, and the rest we can take care of with some Mr. Surfacer just dropped into that gap there at the front. Everything else is reasonably okay. So I'll go ahead and get this panel joined. Just a couple of things to note about that. You'll see that I've taken the fuel tank out, and that's because on test fitting I thought that this fuel tank was obstructing on this detail on the inside face of this panel. Now we can't see the fuel tank in any event, so we're alright to just put that back on now. And we've got a surplus to requirement fuel tank. So let's get that fitted, and I can do the job of filling those little gaps at the front and back. So as you can see, this is a kit that isn't for the first timer really. I think if you're fairly new to the hobby you might struggle with the complexity of the fit of this kit. All I can say is that it does go together, but you've got to be very careful how you go about the sequence of joining some of the parts up. And little adjustments here and there just help the fit along. You might notice I made another goof here when I was drilling the holes for the drop tank. I drilled this one here, which is the wrong position. That's for the extended rack on other versions of the aeroplane, so I've just had to fill that hole back in again. I just assumed incorrectly that the holes were on the centre line, but no, Zoukei Mura just tripped us up there. So I'll fill these gaps in, and then we can look to what we've got to do next. That was Mr. White putty that I've filled that seam with, and I'm just cleaning that up with some Mr. Hobby thinners. It just avoids having to sand the join, which obviously helps to preserve some of the surface detail. We've got some rivets and panel lines around here, so that's a nice clean way of sorting that gap out. So that's an awful lot of work to get those wings fitted, and I'm glad they're on. I'll fit the drop tank carrier at this stage, then it can be painted and weathered along with the rest of the underside. So with the lower cowling, what I've done here is just attach it on the port side to the exhaust shroud, and making sure that the two clips or fasteners are in the correct housing. And then I've just manoeuvred the engine around. There's a little bit of play in the engine, so I've just manoeuvred the engine around to give me a tight fit on the back of the cowling here. And don't forget, we've got the extension piece in to close the gap. So that's nicely in position. It's straightened the engine up. So I'll just wait for this to set up. Just hold it until that joint is glued. And then we can think about any last bits and pieces from this section of the Zoukei Mura instructions that we can do before we come to put some paint on the airframe. That's going to be fine. It's a nice fit altogether. I can't fit the front cowling ring yet because I need to fit the exhausts. I won't get the forward exhaust in if I put the ring on at this stage, so I'll just leave that off, but we know that the fit's going to be good. So I'm glad that's done. It was quite a difficult part of the build to get those wings and those underside panels fitted so that they went together nicely. The last thing I'm going to do for this session is build the guns for the top of the cowling. And I'll put together the cowlings themselves, although I'm not going to fit them at this stage. So these are the MG131s that go on top of the engine. So I'll get those painted up together with these. These are the spent ammunition or cartridge chutes. And the last bit of assembly for this particular episode is to just prepare the cowlings. You can see here that Zoukei Mura are obviously intending other versions because of the different cowlings that they provide. I've just noticed on this sprue that there is a tropical filter, or a couple of tropical filters with the sand covers provided. So it'll be interesting to see what Zoukei Mura have got planned for those in a different kit. Okay, so that's the cowlings done, and what I will do with these is just position them loosely on the aeroplane and mask the engine off with them really, and that'll enable me to match the camouflage scheme up when I come to do the painting on the fuselage. So we'll get these machine guns painted up and get them fitted, and then that'll be it for this week. Okay, so that's as much as I think I can do for this episode. I've got to the end, more or less, of step 4 in the instructions. We should really be at the stage where we've fitted the wheels, but I don't want to do that at the moment. So all the cowlings are ready to tack onto the model, and that means that next time we'll be able to get some priming done, check all that work on the underside, and start to do some painting, and maybe we'll get to fitting some of the decals next time in the next episode, in part 5. So I've got some more work to do on the Bismarck for the rest of the week, so I'll leave this 109 until next week to do any more work on it. So hopefully you'll be able to join me when that next episode comes up. In the meantime, everybody, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you in another few days. Bye for now.